Google ads versus Facebook ads, which one is better? Now, if you're asking the question, hopefully you don't mind me being a little petulant and saying that there's really no right answer. I mean, it's so multivariant that it's difficult to just give you kind of a sterile yes or no. But I'm going to do my best to answer the question and talk about some of the variables involved. So I think the first thing to discuss is it really depends on your product and it depends on who you're selling to. If your product is an intent-based product, means somebody is looking for what it is that you're offering. So the best example in the whole wide world is a plumber. If you're a plumber, somebody that's an intent-based service. So if somebody who's looking for a plumber, needs a plumber, and searches for a plumber, Google Ads is going to be the best option for you because they're going to Google search and they're looking for a plumber. Facebook is tough for a plumber because I'm not scrolling through Facebook with a overflowing toilet saying, like, gosh, I hope I run into a plumbing ad. Now, can you build an audience and do some list building and offer some resources? Yeah, you absolutely can, but go try that for me and tell me what the efficacy is for you long term if you're in a service-based industry like a plumber. So decide first whether or not this is intent-based. If it's intent-based, then I'd strongly recommend starting with Google Search. Even if you think you can drum up some business using Facebook, the nice thing about starting with Google Search for any intent-based product or service is you get to learn so much because they're at the extreme bottom of the funnel. So if somebody has an intent-based product or service, meaning they're looking to buy from you, whatever it is, it could be airlines, pencils, clothing, anything that you think like, yeah, people are actually seeking me out, hand sanitizer, and these are products or services too, Google Ads management, attorneys, doctors, lawyers, naturopathic physicians. If somebody has articulated intent and they're at the bottom of the sales funnel, you always start there. And the reason you start there is because you get to learn what works. You learn for what works from a messaging perspective, what ad copy works, what pricing works, what narrative works. So before you start doing anything outbound, go make all your mistakes and make it in an intent-based environment. Because if you take somebody who's ready to buy and you put your ad in front of this person who's ready to buy and they don't buy, that tells you something. And hopefully the thing that it tells you is something that allows you to improve your business and then, build the bridge to a greater degree even further the next time. So go intent-based first if at all possible. So hopefully that point has been made and it's been well received. Let's put that on a shelf for a minute. Let's assume that either you can't go intent-based or you've already gone intent-based and now you want to decide what to do next. Is it Google versus Facebook? And I think what we're talking about there, really, Google search is intent-based. I don't like Google search for non-intent-based customers, even though I've seen people try to use Google for pivots. If you're searching for something like how to learn website design, you don't necessarily want to send somebody a website development agency. That's too much of a pivot. And learning website design is an intent-based, it's intent for learning. So if you're selling learning lessons, that's great for you. That's the bottom of the funnel. If you're a website development company, that's the top of the funnel and potentially even an unqualified prospect. So take the intent off the discussion plate for just a minute. Now let's talk about what do we do next, or what do we do if there's no intent-based customer. So if there's nothing intent-based, let's say you have something brand new, you need to drum up interest, you created a new software application that people don't even know exists. They don't know that you're able to solve the problem that you're solving. Now we have to go outbound. So there's not as much intent, and we need to identify where our customer is, and that's the key. So that's the key when you're trying to determine whether or not you're going to use Google or Facebook is where do these people live? Where do they hang out? If you can identify like really solid Facebook groups that, have clearly articulated this avatar or segments inside of Facebook that you can target, that's potentially where you want to start. But what I would do is I'd make sure to pay attention to Facebook and YouTube specifically. YouTube has phenomenal segmentation. You're able to segment people according to the web address that they visited. There's in-market audiences, meaning somebody who's actually looking to purchase something specifically. There's affinity audiences, meaning people that have expressed interest in this, category, generally speaking. So I really like YouTube when it comes to hyper segmentation, because you can actually segment on YouTube with a far greater degree of efficacy than you can in Facebook. And the YouTube traffic tends to be a little bit cheaper. So if there's a Facebook group or page or interest that is perfect for you, that'd be great. Go with Facebook. But I wouldn't discount YouTube at all. I think YouTube right now is one of the greatest opportunities facing marketers, and it's being poorly utilized, to be frank. The other thing to really pay a lot of attention to is the Google Display Network. Google Display Network has the same ability to segment as YouTube, or close to it, not the exact same. YouTube, you can segment by specific channels, even specific videos that people are watching, assuming that monetization is enabled. But the Google Display Network has the most expansive reach of any advertising mechanism in existence. Google Display Network reaches 90% of all internet users on the planet, and it reaches 65% of those users on a daily basis. So if you really want to get in front of people, use Google Display. I think Facebook is great if it has a predefined segment that you can clearly see. Otherwise, I'd be spending my time inside of YouTube and Display. I think Facebook is phenomenal for brand building and for remarketing. So make sure you always have a brand campaign, built inside of Facebook that allows you to sort of build your brand to either existing audiences or analogous audiences to that. So using lookalike audiences, custom audiences inside of Facebook. But to answer your question directly, and remember that I run a Google Ads agency, I think Google is the better channel overall. Now, I didn't always just run a Google Ads agency. We were for a very long time a PPC agency. We ran Google and we ran Facebook. I spoke at Infusionsoft Icon. I spoke at PartnerCon, and both of those talks were on advanced Facebook ad strategies. So we did a very deep dive into Facebook for a very long time. As a matter of fact, we were brought in by the Infusionsoft team to train their entire sales team on how to sell Facebook ads when they were interested in white labeling that service. I didn't cut out Facebook because I didn't like it. I cut out Facebook because it didn't work as well. The thing that we found worked the best for the most amount of clients was Google Ads. So forgive me for being, too bullish, I guess, with my opinion if you disagree, but you're watching this video because you actually want a strong opinion. You don't want somebody that's going to be a fence sitter. I think that there's a time and a place for Facebook, absolutely. But Google is going to be the stronger tool with the more multifaceted application. And Google also it's friendlier to use from a data perspective. Facebook just narrowed their attribution window from 28 days to 7, which is insane. If you think about, the path to purchase for most products and services, it's longer than 7 days. And Facebook just went, here's how much data we're going to give you. And anything else on the peripheries, on the fringes, you're not going to see at all. So Google, from an attribution perspective, I think is stronger. Facebook is known to overreport its conversions, which I think has been adequately documented and proven. Facebook strips, analytics and tracking codes, especially if you're on the Facebook mobile browser. So Google allows you to reconcile between Google Ads and, using Google Tag Manager, Google Analytics, and you get to see first click attribution, last click attribution, top conversion path. So Google does a really good job. They're actually opening up even more attribution reporting. They're doing data-driven attribution, which is going to be so much fun to play with, where Google is spreading the attribution across multiple touch points based off of machine learning instead of just time decay. So anyway, I'm a huge fan of Google. If you needed an immediate answer, which one's better, Google Ads or Facebook Ads? I'd say Google Ads. No question, all other things being equal. There are caveats to that, though. If your people are hanging out, if your prospects are hanging out on Facebook and you can find them and you know where the segment is, and Facebook, makes their segmenting, it's pretty easy to track that down and start running those tests, then Facebook can be great. It can work really well. I know we're not supposed to acknowledge the difference between B2B and B2C. One of my favorite thought leaders in the whole wide world is Ryan Dyson. He talks about how, there's no such thing as B2B or B2C. It's all human to human. While I agree with that sentiment, I will say that Facebook tends to perform far better in a B2C environment, because even though it's just, human to human, my experience has been that people tend to, there's a personality to networks. There's a frame of mind that you approach a network with. And B2C marketing tends to be a little bit more functional inside of the Facebook and Instagram ecosystem. And keep that in mind too, by the way. That's another note that I didn't mention is Facebook and Instagram are run out of the same ad manager dashboard, which I actually consider to be a catastrophic error on Facebook's part. Those are two very, very different networks. And the fact that they would deliver the same ads to those people as the same people shows that they don't really understand the personality of those two networks. People go to Facebook to learn and to StockX people, girlfriends and boyfriends, and to argue about politics. It's kind of more of a place to like hang out. People go to Instagram to dream. It's Facebook is a little more left brain, Instagram's a little more right brain. Facebook's a little more masculine, Instagram's a little more feminine. And you can't advertise to those. Even the same person in either network sort of changes perspective and paradigm. And if you don't understand the way the networks work and you don't respect them enough to understand that, then it's hard to advertise in. So, if Instagram if you find people on Instagram that are engaged, it's phenomenal. But it's really hard to get people who are into Instagram out of Instagram. They like to stay in there. So Instagram's really good for brand building awareness, getting people to engage in media. But if you want somebody to click off and purchase something, I'm not saying it's impossible, but Instagram makes it, by design, makes it much harder. So get to know the personality of the network that you want to advertise in. And I hope this was helpful. So, this is one of the questions that we get a lot. Google versus Facebook, the epic showdown. What do you guys think? This is what I think. And there's somebody out there that disagrees with me, somebody who's super smart. So go seek them out too and figure out what they believe. You know, John Loomer comes to mind. He's I think probably the world's foremost authority in Facebook ads. Super smart cat. Probably disagrees with what I'm saying. That's great. You should be listening to both and then making your own decision. I just happen to be a really big fan of Google Ads because I've seen it work over and over and over again. And, you know, Facebook, it's hit or miss. And you hear that, you know, often. Go check out any marketing forum ever. You're going to get a bunch of people that talk about how tumultuous Facebook is and how it's, you know, peaks and valleys and big spikes. And you have a campaign that was performing really well for, you know, 4 weeks and then it just died on the vine. Google's nice because you can build evergreen campaigns and you can sort of replicate successes. I hope this was helpful. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to hear me talk more, subscribe. As soon as I get to 1,000 subscribers, I promise to start going live, which should be pretty cool because then you can ask questions and we can engage and we can be buddies, which will be fun for you and me. Probably mostly me. I can't imagine anybody would want to spend that much time with me. That's all I got. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.